Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. I did a video just yesterday morning about how Stephen Flynn and Kate Forbes had seemingly conspired with others to remove Humza Yousaf and to install Swinney as the fall guy for the next election before ousting him and then one of those two running for the leadership. And it was revealed that actually Swinney is just simply there to take away the sins of the SNP and to give them a fresh slate after he goes. And that way either Flynn or Forbes takes over and can run it and has expunged all the awful past of the party. Of course, the Greens don't want this because they can't work with Forbes, but they say they can work with Flynn. Although it turns out that Flynn is a part of the BAP, the British American Project, which is a very seemingly right-wing organisation and fronted as a CIA organisation. It's all very conspiratorial. It may mean that the Greens won't be able to work with Flynn either. But that's very, very sad, and I won't lose any sleep over it. However, it seems that was not the only plot. It seems that there was another conspiratorial plot behind the scenes. I think when you're getting two different plots by two different wings of the party, one from the sort of more moderate right-hand side of the party and one from the Sturgeon loyalists, then of course Humza Yousaf was never going to make old bones as leader. And yet that's exactly what is emerging. It seems that Nicola Sturgeon's allies were plotting to remove Humza Yousaf. Perhaps they've got an eye of reinstalling Nicola. I wouldn't put it past them. There's calls, after all, in the Conservative Party to bring back Boris. Can you imagine Sturgeon's triumphant return from Purdah? Dear heavens to Betsy, it doesn't bear thinking about. Let's take a look. So Nicola Sturgeon's allies plotted to oust Humza Yousaf over reports of meeting with Alaba MSP. Basically Humza wanted to meet up with Ash Regan. The loyalists of Sturgeon said, no, you can't meet with her. She's toxic. She's too Alex Salmon-y. And so they blocked it. And so sort of the word came down from on high that his time had come. Humza must go. He cannot survive. If he cannot survive without Ash Regan, then he cannot survive. They were going to lift not one finger to save him. After all, he'd been such a disappointing boy, hadn't he? Senior sources say that before the First Minister had taken the decision to resign, power brokers within the party were lining up John Swinney to take over. He was a dead man walking and he didn't even know it. He thought that as leader he was in charge, and that surely must now come as a bit of a shock to him, because he'll realise that he is merely a figurehead, merely the one they put at the front to take the flak. The real power brokers are invisible, silent and behind the scenes. Nicola Sturgeon was in talks with senior SNP ministers as Humza Yousaf was forced out of his job by those who feared Alex Salmon could seize back control of the SNP. That's the last thing they want. They don't want Alex Salmon back. He was far too good, far too popular and far too efficient. They don't want their weaknesses shown up. Even before the First Minister had taken the decision to resign, power brokers had designed it that John Swinney would take over. And as senior sources have confirmed, Yousaf's fate was sealed by Sturgeon's loyalists, who were thrown into a blind panic after it emerged he was meeting Ash Regan. Plans were hatched 3 days before the FM quit to replace him with Swinney. Ex-First Minister Sturgeon called the Greens in a bid to convince them to drop their support for a no-confidence motion. In other words, they said, OK, we'll back the no-confidence motion initially. Then Sturgeon rings and says, don't. And then she's denied that she's had any sort of doings. No, she's not pulling the strings. It's now evident she was. She's still really the power behind the throne. She is the Queen of Scotland at the moment. Just the hidden queen. SNP ministers cheered and thumped the tables when the Greens were sacked from government, and Westminster leader Stephen Flynn lobbied for the Greens to be jettisoned and is keen to be the SNP leader if he loses his seat in the House of Commons. I think it's highly, highly likely. You see, the reason he don't like the Greens is he's up in Aberdeen, isn't he? And the Greens hate Aberdeen, and Aberdeen loves oil because Aberdeen lives, drinks, eats Oil. That's all it is. So he can't be part of a party trying to do oil down, or he's gone. He knows that. So he had to get rid of the Greens and push oil back to the top of the table. Robert McAlpine of the Commonweal think tank said the thing that killed him off quite clearly was that the establishment machine got a sniff that he was showing insufficient hatred towards Alaba, and so they knifed him. It's quite remarkable that his own staff chopped his head off through briefing. I can't think of an occasion where a coup was carried out by the hired help. And the machinery of the SNP, which appears now to be the SNP, seems to be able to wake up one morning and say, let's replace the leader. To say this is bad for democracy is an understatement. And especially when you replace the failure that was Humza Yousaf with the failure that was and will yet to be John Swinney. He will fail again. Of course he will. He's set up to fail. Look, he's showing you how much political nous he's actually got. That much. A senior government source said the question you need to ask is who is in control of the SNP if it's not the leader of the party. And the answer is Nicola Sturgeon, John Swinney, Angus Robertson, Ian Blackford, Liz Lloyd, and a small but influential group bonded by their absolute antipathy towards Alex Salmond and the determination to block him from gaining any influence. And of course the Greens. The Greens are ultimately at the moment running the show. Swinney has been talking about unity, but the truth is that for personal reasons these people will never find common ground with the Salmond wing of the party, which wants to drop gender-based identity politics and the Green Party and return to sharp focus on the economy, public services and independence. Yousaf had to go, and Kate Forbes also had to be stopped because she would never have been able to work with the Greens and so would also have been likely to team up with Regan, of whom she is a close friend. Swinney was seen as the only candidate to keep her out and take over the reins for a couple of years, take the general election hit and then let proper leadership race take place further down the line. And that's the problem. They absolutely, the Sturgeonites absolutely loathe Kate Forbes because Kate Forbes is a voice of reason, is a capable pair of hands, is an intelligent, educated woman, Cambridge educated, not an idiot. And yet they loathe her for exactly those reasons. On Thursday, Humza Yousaf called a 10 a.m. press conference confirming he had ended the Butte House agreement with the Green Party after a car crash interview where co-leader Harvey had refused to accept the Cass report into gender reform. He refused to accept reality. 2 hours earlier, the Greens, summoned by their First Minister's official residence, faced total humiliation when their former SNP colleagues cheered and applauded and thumped the table after the FMR axed them. And it was said that these people who were relying on our support, this was Lorna Slater, these people who were relying on our support less than 24 hours before, and then to be cheered out of Butte House by the rest of the cabinet and marched straight in front of the press. Is it any wonder they were angry about what happened? Slater said it was a spectacular breach of trust. Well, they just said they've had enough of your shit. You were toxic to the SNP. You had to go. Anyway, on Friday, the FM tells the Greens he understands their anger and urges them not to back a Tory vote of no confidence. He's back home at Dundee and announces 80 million for affordable housing. Has to do something to get in front of the press and say, hey, look, it's everything. Look, we're doing this. Don't look over there. Look over here. You know, nothing to see over there. That was it. Distraction, deflection, changing the subject, draw the eye away from the shit that is the SNP and the Greens. An SNP source said that Humza realised he'd made the fatal error and considered resigning, but was talked out of it by pregnant wife Nadia and pregnant friend Mary McCallan. A friend said at that point he thought he could fight on. He was doomed. He was doomed 13 months ago. Anyway, ex-First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is understood to have approached the Greens to try to get them to change their minds, but failed. And tentative plans were then discussed about replacing Humza with Swinney, should Humza be forced out. And at that moment, the shot was fired. That's when he was gone. On Saturday, Yousaf writes letters to the other party leaders, begging them to find common ground and keep him in place, on bended knee. He is dismissed by Anna Sawar, Douglas Ross and Alex Cole Hamilton, all of whom told him a wee boily ahead. Humza's team confirms to the Sunday Mail that lines of communication have been opened between him and Ash Regan in order to secure her vote in a bid to survive. And that was when it was doom. The noose was tightened. He was finished. Sunday, First Minister believed an agreement with Reagan could still save him, but the Sunday Mail's front page, which declared Humza, I'll work with Salmond, sent officials into meltdown. The plan to install Swinney as leader of the SNP and the First Minister was enacted, and senior sources began briefing newspapers and broadcasters that Humza was resigning and Swinney was to take over. So they told the press that Humza was resigning before Humza knew that he was resigning. Goes to show where the power brokers really are, isn't it? Humza, you thought you were in charge of the party. You're not even in charge of your own job. A source said at least 2 members of the government were determined at all cost to not allow a situation to develop which could see the SNP relying on Alaba's support. And as much as Humza wanted to cast this as a deal with Regan and not Salmond, the undeniable reality is Salmond is the leader of the party, and he, of course, would be pulling all the strings. Very senior Sturgeon allies in the government and party made it clear that a deal with Alaba could not go ahead under any circumstances. Monday, Regan texts the FM asking him if they are meeting. The FM calls her and says her requests to give her support are very reasonable. But within hours, Humza appears in Butte House to resign. He was told, resign and save face or we will destroy you. Salmond later told reporters the reason he didn't do a deal with Alba is because there are forces within his own party who are stopping him doing him. Let's call them the old guard. With hours, MPs and MSPs, including Flynn and Mary McCallum, were backing Swinney, despite the fact he had not even announced he would stand. No, he was standing before anyone had told him he was standing. He was already deigned as the new King of Scotland before anyone had told either party. The decision had been made. There was no going back. It's a conspiracy. It's a coup d'etat. Scotland, you've just had a coup d'etat under your very noses. An SNP source said it's incredibly stressful and disorienting to be the person at the centre of a political bun fight, and you need the people around you to be fighting your corner. If you're in the centre, you don't have a corner. Surely. Anyway, Humza is to wake up a few days from now and begin to wonder whether that was the case. It was undoubtedly the case. He was done the moment he broke with the Greens. Tory leader Douglas Ross announces he was withdrawing the party's planned vote of no confidence. He shouldn't have done. He should have carried on. And then Labour faced pressure from the Greens and SNP to drop theirs. But of course they didn't, and then they lost it because the Greens came in to save Humza's arse. Well, to save the SNP's arse, not to save Humza's. He was gone. A source close to Nicola said the Greens made their position on the vote of no confidence clear on the day the Butte House agreement ended. That doesn't mean constructive relationships can't continue. Nicola talks to colleagues and former colleagues regularly. There is nothing surprising in that. She doesn't talk in Parliament regularly, though, does she? SNP spokesperson said Humza Yousaf has set out in straight terms what led to his decision to stand down in First Minister. No, he hasn't. He's given the excuse that he's happy with. He hasn't told the truth because he daren't, he can't, and he knows that the truth was it was a coup d'etat without his knowledge. You sad man. Coming up. And there you have it. Humza was gone. He didn't know it. Swinney was in. He didn't know it. The forces behind the throne said enough's enough. He goes, put him in, make it so. And they made it so. And nobody knew where this came from. Silent words from grey men in dark corridors. Dirty deals done in back rooms. Money changing hands undoubtedly. And sinister little forces of the left conspiring to remove democracy from the people of Scotland yet again. This is the world you live in because you keep voting for the SNP. How much better it would be if that wasn't the case. Thanks very much for listening. Do hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, and let me know down there if you think what has happened is accurate. If it's false, let me know. Just let me know your thoughts. Till next time, stay safe, stay well, and I'll speak to you later. Bye.